Mike Bradford considered himself the luckiest man alive. In just 10 days, he would be marrying Angela Wilson, the woman he adored, the love of his life, and the person he had vowed to cherish until the end of his days. Angela's bridesmaids included her 3 closest friends, Betty, Christine, and Dolly. Together, they were fondly referred to as ABCD, a playful nod to their initials. Mike and Angela first met at a wedding, where Mike was the best man for his friend Paul, and Angela was one of the bridesmaids. They exchanged numbers that day, and their relationship quickly blossomed. A year later, they decided to take the next step and get engaged. Christine, who had been living with her boyfriend Ron for several months, was eagerly waiting for him to propose. Dolly, however, had a pattern of changing boyfriends every 6 months and was currently dating someone named Elle. Mike's mother, Mary, had never approved of Angela. He was aware of this and hoped that with time, her feelings would change. He suspected it was the kind of jealousy some mothers feel when they think their daughters-in-law are taking their sons away. Being an only child, Mike believed this was the root of her resentment. His father, Josh, however, had a different approach. On the day Mike introduced Angela to his parents, Josh had simply said, "Son, you've made your decision and now you'll have to live with it." Angela's parents, Peter and Julie, had supported their relationship from the very start. Peter liked Mike right away, but Julie, being somewhat overprotective of her daughter, always sought the best for Angela. She had once asked Mike to buy a house, saying her daughter deserved to live in a place they owned, not one they rented. Mike had replied that they would stay in his apartment for now and buy a house when they were ready to start a family. As the wedding drew closer, Angela's bachelorette party was scheduled for a week before the ceremony. Only her 3 friends would attend, and the location of the event was kept secret. One day, Mike went to Paul and Betty's house. Betty answered the door. "Hi, Mike," she said warmly. "Come on in. Paul's upstairs in the bathroom. Take a seat. I'm sure he'll be down soon." "Thanks," Mike replied, stepping inside. "I just wanted to go over a few things with him." "Don't worry about a thing," Betty reassured him. "Everything's going to be fine. I know this is a stressful time, but it'll all work out." "I know. But I can't help worrying about something going wrong at the last minute," Mike admitted. "If anything does, we'll handle it," Betty said confidently. Just then, her phone rang. "I need to take this call," she said, heading toward the kitchen. "Paul will be down in a minute." Left alone in the living room, Mike waited for a few minutes before heading into the kitchen to pour himself a glass of water. From the kitchen, he noticed Betty standing on the terrace, speaking on the phone. She was talking in a low voice, almost whispering. No, she said, sounding frustrated. "You don't understand. We can't afford 3 guys. Their payment starts when they leave Louisville. And don't forget, we also have to cover their travel expenses to and from Elmer Davis Lake." Mike froze, frowning as he listened. "With the cost of the cottage rental, drinks, and food, we just can't spend that much," she continued. "Remember, all the expenses are being split 3 ways. Angela isn't contributing anything. It's her party. 2 guys will be enough. I'll handle the shopping on Saturday morning." Mike's chest tightened as he leaned against the wall, careful not to be seen. "We'll all go in my SUV. It'll be easier that way," Betty added. "All right, I have to go. Mike's here to see Paul." Quickly, Mike set his glass in the sink and returned to the living room just as Paul came down the stairs. When he returned to his apartment later, Mike couldn't stop replaying what he had overheard. He was sure Betty had been talking about the bachelorette party, which was supposed to be just for Angela. Who were these 2 guys, and what was their role at the event? After a few minutes of thinking, Mike decided on a plan. Grabbing his laptop, he logged into an online marketplace and searched for a GPS tracking device. After browsing several options, he found one that suited his needs and placed an order with express delivery. Later that evening, Mike's phone rang. It was Angela. "Hello," he answered, recognizing her number. "Hi, honey," Angela's warm voice came through. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, of course. Why do you ask?" "It's the way you answered," she said with concern. "You sounded off. Is something bothering you?" "No, Angela," he replied, brushing off her question. "I've just been a little tense these past few days." "You're not planning to back out at the last minute, are you?" Angela teased, trying to lighten the mood. "Angela, I love you too much to ever do something like that," Mike reassured her. "And in 10 days when we make our vows, I will honor them for the rest of my life. You'll always be the only woman for me." Angela's tone softened. "Of course, darling. I feel the same way. I'll always keep my promises to you." The conversation continued, but Angela couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mike didn't seem like himself. As soon as she hung up, her suspicion grew stronger. The following Saturday, Mike discreetly attached the GPS tracker to Betty's SUV. Over the next few days, he monitored its movements, carefully following her route on the morning of the bachelorette party. When Betty's SUV finally stopped at a cottage near Elmer Davis Lake, Mike parked his car nearby and watched from a distance. At dusk, Mike crept closer to the house. Using a camera, he secretly recorded what was happening inside. What he saw left him seething with rage. The bachelorette party had turned into a wild scene with male strippers. Angela, his fiancée, was among the group, participating enthusiastically. Unable to watch any longer, Mike left the camera running and slipped back to his car. He scratched the word "idiots" onto the stripper's car and punctured their tires before driving away. Later that night, he returned home, his heart heavy with anger and betrayal, knowing that his future with Angela was over. Betty closed the front door and turned to her friends. "We need to do this more often," she said cheerfully. The other three women nodded in agreement. "Maybe we should plan a girls' night out every month," Angela suggested. "That's a fantastic idea," Christine replied, laughing. "The night is still young, and there's plenty left to drink." "Let's have another round," Betty exclaimed enthusiastically. Mike had reached his limit. He picked up the camera he had hidden, closed the door behind him, and walked away. He felt utterly defeated, betrayed, and on the verge of tears. He had trusted Angela completely, and now that trust had been shattered. Summoning his courage, he made his way through the darkness to Betty's SUV. Crawling underneath, he used his pliers to snip the zip ties securing the GPS tracker. Then, he let the air out of all four tires. Feeling broken, he returned to his car and drove away. The following day, Sunday around noon, Mike arrived at Paul's house. Paul greeted him at the door, his face lined with concern. "What's going on, Mike? I could tell something was wrong from your call." "Betty was supposed to be here at 10, Paul said, frustration in his voice. "She's not answering any of my calls. They go straight to voicemail." "Have you tried calling the others?" Mike asked, already reaching for his phone. Paul nodded. "Let's see if Angela answers." Mike dialed Angela's number, but there was no response. He then tried Christine and Dolly, but neither picked up. "Have you sent her a message?" Mike asked. "Of course," Paul replied, clearly worried. "What if something's happened to them?" Mike grabbed his phone and typed out a message. "I'm with Paul. He's worried. Betty was supposed to be here at 10. Call me." He hit send and sighed. "Let's wait and see if Angela gets back to me," he said. Paul grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed one to Mike. 30 minutes passed without a word from Angela. Frustrated, Mike typed another message. "If you don't call me right now, I'm ending this relationship." He hit send and turned to Paul. "Sometimes, you have to take control of the situation," Mike said, giving Paul a wink. Just then, Mike's phone buzzed. Angela's voice came through, yelling, "Are you out of your mind? Paul and I are losing it over here. None of you are answering your phones or replying to messages," Mike shot back, his tone sharp. "Don't yell at me," Angela began. "Where are you?" Mike demanded, cutting her off. "We had a flat tire," Angela said hesitantly. "We called roadside assistance. They'll be here soon." "Where are you?" Mike repeated, his voice rising. "It's just a flat tire," Angela said, trying to calm him. "I'm asking one last time. Where are you?" Mike pressed. Angela hesitated before answering. "We're at the cottage near Elmer Davis Lake." "Tell Betty to answer her phone," Mike said coldly. "Paul's been trying to reach her." Paul stepped aside to make a call to Betty while Mike continued interrogating Angela. "Why didn't anyone answer when Paul called?" he asked. "We didn't want to bother him about the flat tire," Angela replied, her voice wavering. "Actually, you bothered us by ignoring our calls. Call roadside assistance. They'll put on the spare tire. Where exactly are you?" Angela hesitated again. "All 4 tires are flat," she admitted quietly. "All 4? Mike feigned surprise. "How did that happen?" We don't know," Angela stammered. "Then you'd better wait for roadside assistance," Mike said curtly. "Paul and I are heading to Louisville to have some fun." "What kind of fun?" Angela asked, her tone alarmed. Mike hung up without answering. Turning to Paul, he said, "Call Ron and Al. Let's have a boys' night out." That evening, the 4 men drove to Louisville. They enjoyed dinner, visited a gentleman's club, and ended up at a bar. Mike struggled to keep his emotions in check but maintained his composure throughout the night. As the evening wound down, Mike raised his glass for a toast. "Guys, I have a suggestion," he said, his voice steady. "We're listening," the others replied in unison. No one sleeps with their significant other until my honeymoon, Mike declared. Why? Paul asked, raising an eyebrow. To teach them a lesson, Mike said with a smirk. We're in charge, and we make the rules. I'm in, Ron said, grinning. Sounds good to me, Al muttered, already tipsy. Paul shrugged. If everyone agrees, I won't argue. Mike smiled confidently. Let's stick to it then. And no one tells the girls about tonight. The next day, Angela called Mike, eager to know where he had been the previous night. The only thing she learned from Betty was that Paul had come home late, drunk, and had slept in the guest room. The other women didn't share any details, and Mike knew they were all in the dark. You see, Angela, Mike said calmly, I don't know where all of you were during the party or what you were doing, so why are you so curious about us? I told you we were at the cottage, Angela replied defensively. We drank, ate, danced, and told some naughty stories. You only told me that after the party, and only after ignoring multiple calls, Mike shot back. Well, we also ate, drank, danced, and shared a few stories. That's all? Angela asked, her voice softening. What? Do you think we slept with the entire town? Mike snapped. No, of course not, Angela said quickly. I know you wouldn't do that. You're right, Mike said, his voice firm. I wouldn't. We're in an exclusive relationship, aren't we? Yes, Angela said softly, of course. But there's one thing, Angela, Mike continued. According to family tradition, we shouldn't see each other or talk until we meet at the altar. What? Angela exclaimed, shocked. It's important to honor that, Mike said, his tone unyielding. I hope you understand. Yes, darling, I understand, Angela replied hesitantly. Good. I'll see you at the altar, Mike said, hanging up sharply. Angela sat there, stunned. His tone was cold. No, darling, sweetheart, or I love you. She tried to reassure herself that it was just pre-wedding jitters. On the wedding day, Mike stood at the altar with the priest behind him. His groomsmen, Paul, Ron, and Al, flanked him, while Angela's bridesmaids, Betty, Christine, and Dolly, stood on the opposite side. The church was packed as the wedding march played, and Peter walked Angela down the aisle. She looked angelic in her gown, but Mike's expression remained unreadable. My dear friends, the priest began, we are gathered here today. Excuse me, Father, Mike interrupted. Before we proceed, I have something I need to say. Everyone in the church turned to Mike in shock.